That will never work. You can't push that. Seriously? Don't. Oh my God, there are other things you can do. That's bad. You probably should find other hobbies. You ever learn how to stop? Be happy. You don't bother me. I've seen better. Do you really want to stop? And my third grade, get up. Welcome to Horrible Writing, the rawest, most candid, in-your-face writing show on the interwebs because none of us have time to suck. Let's do this. Hey everybody, Paul Sading. Welcome to episode 32 of Horrible Writing. Yes, this time we are continuing on with our writer interview series, and I'm really honored to have this gentleman join us this time around. His name? Thoreau Smiley. You may not know that name yet. You will. You may not recognize his voice or his voices, but you will by the time all of this is said and done. And we're actually going to talk about a topic that I'm really interested to dive into because I think it's a lot deeper of a topic than a lot of people think. It may be, at least on the surface. So, Thoreau is all-around, just a very artistic, talented person. So he's a voice actor. He's an audio dramatist. He does all the production, all that stuff. He's obviously a writer of Attention Hellmart Shoppers, and he has something else coming up that he may or may not share. And I believe, and Thoreau will correct me if I'm wrong, but I also believe he's involved in the arts in the theater as well. So, Thoreau, welcome to Horrible Writing, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. It's great to be talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. I'm really excited about this. Now, for listeners, longtime listeners, you know that I'm somewhat of a sound Nazi, and Thoreau's going to sound a little different. We have had some technical difficulties trying to get this interview going, but I do want to thank you, Thoreau, for your patience and being okay with walking around with a phone to your ear while we do this instead of Skype.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
I think we'll get through. I think we'll survive this.
Yeah, if this is the worst thing that happens today, then I'll be good.
Yes, about keeping it in perspective and dealing with life, which is a great segue because when I look for writer interviews, I try to really do a fair job to the entire spectrum, which is almost impossible anyways. But one of the things I haven't touched on, and I've touched on a lot of things. I've touched on positive things. We had Sarah Ray Werner from Girl in Space on earlier, and she talked about positivity. And I had novelist Susan K. Quinn on, and we talked about meditation. But a lot of times when I have these author interviews, I talk about, some darker things and troubling things. And one of the things I haven't touched on yet is comedy. And that's why I've brought you on, because I really want to get into that. And just the dynamics of writing comedy and what it does for you, the person. So I really appreciate you taking this time out.
Oh yeah, no problem. It's in a lot of ways I feel like comedy doesn't get the due that drama does. People tend to think of it as the lesser side of a lot of fiction in a lot of ways, and I think that's in a lot of ways very unfair because it isn't easy to do well.
Right.
any more than drama is easy to do well, of course, but if you do it well, it seems very light. So people, I think, tend to treat it as light entertainment rather than the art that I think it can be.
No, I agree with you. Anybody who knows what I put out there into the world knows that one of the things I have done, and it was actually my introduction to audio drama, was writing comedy. And it's, and I know you're probably going to be a little humble, but I really think it's, for me, in Paul's opinion, it's the toughest form to pull off. I agree with every sentiment you just shared, but man, it's not nearly as easy as I thought it was. And I think a lot of people look at it like that. Just put some stupid humor in there, some, try to write some fresh jokes, and it's all good. And it's much more difficult than that.
It is. It's very subjective too, though, because what one person finds hilarious, another person will sit through without breaking a smile. So
yes, I get those. Do you get those feedback emails or messages that I have gotten over the years from Atheist Apocalypse, where I had somebody write me a couple of weeks ago, and they said, "Is this supposed to be funny? Because I just don't get it."
I've gotten a little of that. I've actually gotten a lot more feedback about for Hellmart. Actually, I've gotten more feedback about the interpersonal relationships than anything else, which honestly surprised me, because that wasn't what I was expecting people to pay a lot of attention to.
Really? What kind of things have they been saying about it?
Well, I've gotten a lot of feedback about the character of Chet and his orientation.
Really?
Yeah. I think. Well, I feel like audio drama in general has a pretty large LGBT audience, larger than a lot of other forms of media, right, in a lot of ways, and that's there's been a bit of humor involving Chet that's cast some doubt onto his on what his orientation is, but it hasn't thus far been directly spoken of in the show. So I get asked about that a lot, actually.
That's one of the things I've noticed has been with comedy. Anything that I have tried to do with characters and that, people are a lot more sensitive to than they are in any of the drama that I've written.
Yeah. People will get riled up about jokes. If you're taking a subject seriously, a lot of the times people are willing to hear you out and think about your point of view or what you're trying to say. But if you do it comedically, it's almost like a gut reaction. It's a lot more emotional to people in a lot of ways sometimes. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It really is. There's things I've I've tried in drama that I can pull off easily, and if I were to try it or have tried it in the past, not so successfully in Atheist Apocalypse, it hasn't gotten the same type of respectable or / accepted reaction. So that is interesting. So having said that about comedy, and since this is horrible writing and we talk about that affective side of being a writer, I know there are a lot of people who love writing comedy, creating comedy, and there's a lot of audio dramatists that, and I see chatter more and more and more as the medium evolves, and we start leaving our infancy and we're starting to get into our toddlerhood. And yes, you traditionalists, I know audio drama's been around for 100 years. I get that. I'm talking about the resurgence. Okay, everybody, calm down. But so I see a lot more people getting excited about comedy, wanting to do it. Yeah. I have been very upfront with folks and provide a cautionary tale, whereas Atheist Apocalypse is my oldest audio drama. It is by far the least successful of the three that I have out there, and it could have to do with a lot of things, all the way boiled down to something as silly as the title in it, which I know is a factor in it. But there are other things as well. So I try to provide a cautionary tale to folks, and I think you're going to be able to help folks understand what comedies can serve to a community and what it serves to you. So I want to start off with you then. Why comedy?
Okay. Diving right in. It's like with anything anyone does creatively or is passionate about. It has to go back to my youth or my childhood. My father definitely introduced me to a lot of comedy. He was generally considered a pretty funny man. Some of my earliest memories actually are of watching the Marx Brothers movies with him. But then I get going into middle school and high school. Those years can be a little brutal again. And not to say that I was picked on a bit. I was kind of your, in a lot of ways, like your classic nerd. I was in drama club. I got pretty good grades.
How dare you?
So, yes, I know the sins. But I could diffuse a lot of would-be bullies by making a joke, and it was around that time, probably around the first few years of high school, that people started telling me I was funny. So I would use that more. And if you can make somebody laugh, then they're on your side instantly. It's a way to connect with people you normally would never connect with. If you share a laugh with somebody, then you're immediately friends. You're immediately on the same side, and they don't see you as an antagonist anymore. I'm also a fairly reserved person generally, and which just drives my wife crazy because she is a talker. But so I've never been able to connect with strangers immediately, like the way a lot of people do. I hear you talking to people in many of your shows and many of the interviews you give very easily, and that's definitely not a skill I normally have for myself. But when you can if I can make somebody laugh a little bit, then I'm reaching out and I'm making a human connection with them, and that in a lot of ways that's a lot easier than making a real emotional connection, because there's a lot less on the line there. Mm-hmm. You're not putting as much of yourself out there. It's a way of reaching out and connecting to somebody without actually having to really put any of yourself out there.
So it doesn't necessarily, you writing comedy for Hellmart, then it doesn't necessarily replace. I'm trying to form the question in my head as I'm thinking about it, but essentially I thought it might be something along the lines of where you were more reserved in person and this made it easier for you. But it sounds like you're able to do this. You're able to connect with people in person through comedy as well. It may be just more laborious, so it comes much more naturally, or it's a better gateway maybe in the written form.
Yeah, well, I mean, through years of intentionally, trying to connect with people by making them laugh, comedy becomes something natural. Add into that, I had some drama experience. You do improv over the years, and naturally things like that, you're going to be, you're going to hone your comedic skills more. So it becomes almost second nature to just make somebody laugh. And so it really never occurred to me to try to make a show that wasn't primarily funny. It never even entered my mind.
That makes sense. Yeah. Myself, when I was younger, trying to do, not as successfully as you, but you'll hear a lot of it in Atheist Apocalypse. We bragged from the beginning about tipping sacred cows, because that's how you get people to think about the world and think about important issues. Sometimes you have to burn the bridge behind you and make them look at the route in front of them. And that came from my upbringing of being the scrawny 120-pound, senior in high school, just the twig kid. And you know how guys can be to each other. They can be horrible to each other when you're scrawny and skinny type of thing. And I use comedy as a defense mechanism, as a buffer, where it sounds like almost a complete inverse for you, which is really cool for me. Where you used it as a bridge, I used it as, a stiff arm to protect myself from these bullies, essentially.
Well, yeah, but I mean, don't let that, don't let my description of comedy as a way to reach out to people fool you. I mean, that's a way to reach out to people while keeping them at arm's length.
Got it. Okay.
So, I mean, everyone wants to connect with people. Everyone wants to form those, have those human moments. But if and I'm speaking a lot more through adolescence. I'm a pretty well-adjusted adult at this point in my life, as well as anyone for the most part. But especially through adolescence, it's I could connect with people, but at the same time, keep that stiff arm out there to keep them away from getting too close.
Okay. All right, and that makes sense. But it sounds like you have a healthier balance to it than I did. I mean, I finished, it depends on when people hear this, but as of when we're recording and when this will be announced or released, I mean, Atheist Apocalypse will still be a current thing. It's wrapping up its final season. But, I wrote that last season well over a year ago now, and it's still very much the same type of tool for me. So it's great to see, and I'm glad you came on. This is why I wanted you to come on and talk to this, because that's a much healthier balance in terms of dealing with the real world and how comedy can serve both you, the individual, and help you interact with the world around you versus what some people may do that might not be as healthy as that. So at least you were smart enough to pick up on it and go, hey, I can do this thing. And you listened to the feedback that you were given from, it sounds like, an early age.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess it did help me learn to cope with the world in a healthier way. Definitely. I other than being a kind of typical, drama nerd during high school kind of thing, I didn't have an especially difficult childhood. So that I wasn't necessarily using comedy to cope with like deep, dark despair or anything.
Right.
But it is still without a doubt, a coping mechanism. Like I said, it's definitely something that came from my father. So I'm sure there's, something there a therapist would love to delve into, but
don't they always? There's always
there's always something with your dad right. for guys anyways.
I didn't tell you that's why you were coming on the show, so we could delve into this like a therapist, just in a public forum.
Oh, great.
So when it comes to this, okay, so I'm trying to picture that younger person, maybe possibly, who is listening to you right now, and they're a fan of Attention Hellmart Shoppers, and they just love the humor, and they're hearing what you're saying about how it helped you as a human being, as an individual. So a couple questions to that point then, and I'll be fair and give you time to respond to them. One of them is I'm just curious how, chicken or egg type of concept here. How, which served the other better? Was it you in your solitude, in your brain space, as a younger man, that comedy helped you deal with some of those stresses and struggles and then make those connections? Or was it, and I know I'm creating a false dichotomy here, but was it the world around you and that feedback that you were getting that helped you find that comedy funny bone that you had all along?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely a give and take. I mean, I think many people can find that within themselves to react to the world in that way. I mean, so I guess basically you're asking, did the world make me funny, or am I funny in reaction to the world?
Right.
But it's a skill like anything else. So it's something you can learn. It's something you can do. I mean, sure, some people are naturally, I don't want to say funnier than others, because I don't think that's really fair. But and I don't necessarily consider myself a funny person on a day-to-day basis, but it's I definitely chose to use comedy because of what was going on in the world in my life and what I had to deal with. I definitely chose to react to it using comedy rather than react to it in a more serious way. It really is, like you said, a chicken and the egg thing, because there's the world, whether it's being funny or tragic at the moment, you're going to have to react to that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can choose to cry or you can choose to laugh. So I've always tried to laugh rather than cry, because it's just easier to get through laughing than crying.
Oh yeah, no, and it's it depends on how it serves you as a person. I agree with you, Thoreau. I do. Before I did Atheist Apocalypse, I did other types of talk show podcasting that dealt with social issues, and I was turning into a very angry person, like what you were saying there. Without being explicit, the world is a frustrating place, and when you deal with it, when you keep trying to ram your head into the brick wall that doesn't give, you're gonna get a headache, and the headaches made me angry. So that's what bore Atheist Apocalypse was. I needed a healthier way to deal with the brick wall that was the world, and it really served itself, and it served me as a human being much better to deal with it that way. I still got to explore those deeper thoughts, those deeper emotions, those deeper reactions through comedy. And I don't know if you agree or not, I think people miss that a lot of us do that who at least try our hand at comedy. We're not just flippantly being dumb to make you get a shallow laugh. Some of this stuff is really layered and comes from a real deep, sometimes dark place.
Oh yeah, no, very much. And I mean, for the record, I really enjoy Atheist Apocalypse.
Well, thank you
for the record, but and no, I can hear that in listening to it. I can hear you working through things,
mm-hmm.
Or whenever it was you were working through things a few years ago, no, comedy comes from a lot of the best comedy in a lot of ways comes from a very dark place. I mean, comedy is at its heart subversion.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you take something very dark and turn it into something light, then that makes people laugh. I mean, even down to the most basic old joke, "Take my wife, please." That's at its heart a very dark thing. like,
yeah.
Please take away my wife. I'm in an unhappy marriage. So that comedy definitely comes from a dark place, and it definitely allows people to explore those dark areas without themselves having to feel the despair of taking it too seriously.
So with that in mind, I'm curious. This is a completely front of the lobe question here. Do you self-censor when you're writing? Are there things that Thoreau Smiley will put into a script of Hellmart that the world will never see, because when you go back into that script and you're rehearsing, or you're just doing a simple edit on it, that you catch yourself going, wow, I really tapped into something I don't want to put out into the world?
A little. I mean, here and there. It's not a lot. For the most part, there'll be a joke here or there.
Okay.
Something that I'm like, that may be a little too un-PC. Here and there.
Which is saying something. If anybody ever goes and listens to Attention Hellmart Shoppers, which I encourage you all to do, that's really saying something. You don't shy away from things.
No. In general, I don't. In general, I my show is very, very rated M for mature. So, and I curse like a sailor in it. So, but there's a few things that it's like, I can see how this joke might offend people without making them laugh. It may be a little too offensive and not funny enough. If something's funny enough, honestly, I usually will chance at offending people if I think it's funny enough.
And like you said, it's a dangerous territory because it is so subjective. I mean, it's that emotional investment. I think there's subjectivity in all art, but in the middle of a subject found script, if I do something, I might get one person a little mad at me. Like when I killed the dog in season 1, that was the biggest thing that got people upset. Versus some of the emails that I've gotten from Atheist Apocalypse, where people are so offended they'll never subscribe and they'll tell all their friends to not subscribe again because one of their sacred. It's always funny when it's the other, and when you're picking on the other side, it's always hilarious. But when the mirror gets turned on you, all of a sudden it's not so funny anymore. So I was definitely curious how much or if you did self-censor as you were going through those things. It's not easy to navigate that landscape at all.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. And, the one thing I usually try to keep in mind is that, like they say, you should always punch up. Don't make jokes at the expense of the people below you or the people that are suffering, the people that are having a hard time. Make jokes at the expense of people that can take it.
Right.
So, but, that's, we're also living in a time where a lot of people, in a lot of cases, justifiably so, are very upset about a lot of things that are going on. So it is a field of landmines you have to try to walk through when you're creating any sort of art these days.
Yeah, no, it really is. So with that, for you as a person then, or for those people who identify with what you're doing in your comedy, does comedy serve as a buffer or a defense to the world or to issues, temporary or permanent? Does it serve as a defense for you?
Yeah, it does. It serves as an emotional defense, personally and creatively, I think, and ultimately that's, hopefully by sharing it with others, it can help serve as a defense temporarily for a few minutes against the world for them too. By laughing at a joke about how terrible corporate culture is, maybe that helps them deal with the fact that they have to go and work a 9-to-5 minimum wage job for the next 5 days in a row. Do you get I'm curious,
do you get comments like that because of the way your show is structured? And I'm going to give Thoreau a chance to talk about the show itself, but for the context of this question, I feel like I've got to ground the audience. I'm not going to give too much away. I'll let Thoreau speak to that. But essentially, you've created a world where it's a hilarious world. But the point I'm trying to make here is the world is set in where you really highlight some of the idiocy, some of the deranged nature of the corporate world and the lunacy of the corporate world sometimes. In a very funny way, you do that. But I'm curious, do you get feedback from your fans about that? Like, hey man, thanks, because I was about to go off on my boss when I walked in and I listened to episode X and XYZ.
Yeah. No, I definitely, I hear from people. I get comments on Twitter and occasionally on Facebook, and from people who said, I'm listening to the show while I'm at work. I'm in the stock room, and it's keeping me from just quitting right now. I've had people say that this is they basically work in Hellmart in whatever store they're in, and it helps them keep it all in perspective a little bit. So I hear a fair amount from actual retail and corporate workers about how they can connect with the subject matter.
As artists, it's tough to put our words out there into the world, and like you just said, sometimes it does feel like you're just putting things into a void, into the vacuum of space to be sucked away and never heard or seen again. When you do actually hear some noise back, and it's not the best noise in the world, as a comedy writer, as a comedy creator of comedy, how does that impact the ego when your comedy does fall flat, when it fails, whatever subjective term you want to put to it? All the way back to Thoreau, the teenager who was starting to be told by people that he was funny, to Thoreau, the man who's putting out attention Hellmart shoppers. What is that impact like for you? Are you able to easily dust yourself off and plug along, or do you take the slings and arrows and you gotta kind of patch the wounds?
Yeah, well, I mean, these days I'm getting a little older. These days I can take it, and I can take those comments and that feedback, and I can look at it and compartmentalize it and move on with my day. That wasn't always the case. Mm-hmm. I definitely took criticism a lot harder in my younger days, but it's not great. No one wants to hear that someone doesn't like what you're doing, but it doesn't ruin my day anymore. I can look at it and, sure, it'll okay, I'm not going to lie. It occasionally will come back and you'll be like, oh yeah, old, Dongelinger 69 on Reddit didn't like that one, but, it's not something that haunts me. When I was younger, it was completely would shake my world when I'd get feedback like that. It was very hard to deal with when I was younger, but that's hopefully part of maturing.
Right. Well, and I think it's an important thing on a writer's show to talk about the use of comedy. It doesn't matter what genre you're writing in. There's most stories in most genres can do with at least subtle humor, or a little bit of humor. It really helps drive characters and personality and things like that. But at the same time, for me, your experience, Thoreau, may have been different. But at the same time, for me, if somebody gets upset at Diary of a Madman, it doesn't bother me. That show is supposed to be dark. It's supposed to be twisted. It's supposed to bother people. So when people are bothered, great. I got a reaction out of them, and that's what I wanted. Subject Found doesn't really get hate, except for the guy who thinks it's pro-Bigfoot propaganda. But besides that,
yeah. That's the best comment I've heard in a long time.
Well, I wish it was just internet comment. It's actually an Apple podcast review. I think he gave it a 2-star. I think he moved it up from a 1-star to a 2-star because of the pro-Bigfoot propaganda. Shoot. But besides that, it doesn't really solicit anything. But man, I'll tell you what, when it comes to the comedy, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because we tap into so many intimate, inherent characteristics of ourselves that goes into writing comedy versus thrillers or romance or whatever it is. Have you ever written things, really tried to deep dive right into things other than comedy?
I mean, here and there. I've tried. I mean, I've written a few things that were not primarily comedy. I don't think I've ever written anything that had zero comedy in it. But it's not my forte. I don't think I'm an especially great dramatist. um, I have to really plan out dramatic beats and dramatic moments in a way that I don't. Comedy, I can just let it fly a lot more.
And that makes sense. And that's why I was wondering if that was even a fair question to ask you, simply because, it's Paul's opinion only, and it's only because I've written in a couple different genres, if you will, that it's just interesting for me to see how the comedy dynamic works versus the other. The other ones feel safer to me. Don't send me hate. It's just my personal opinion, listeners, but they just feel safer in that respect. And it may only be because with my comedy and Atheist Apocalypse, it's satirical. So it's another partition, another branch of comedy altogether too. So maybe I wouldn't have had this kind of experience if I had tried something that wasn't explicitly satirical. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. People get really riled up about comedy. I mean, even the most mainstream comedy, people get mad about if it's not to their taste. The internet's full of people that hate, like The Big Bang Theory and Friends and the big mainstream comedy, and they get really angry about it in a way that they don't get angry about whatever, ER or Law and Order.
That's so true. It really is. I don't know what it is. We're going to have to deep dive into this someday because I don't get it. It's comedy.
Yeah, no, 'cause I don't know. There's something there. It connects. It's making someone laugh is a very intimate thing in a lot of ways. That's kind of what I was talking about, making connections with people. If you can make somebody laugh, that's I don't know, touching something deep inside them.
Well, yeah, and I think, everybody translates it their own way. Whereas, if I were to put for example, you had a recent episode, and I'm not going to spoil anything here, but it was like an Ocean's 11 type scenario, and one of the members, a female member on the team, had to do something in order to help the team get access to an area that they wanted to get access to, and when I was listening to that, and I'm not gonna lie to you, when I was listening to that, I thought, I wonder if he's gonna get shit because of this, because he's trying to play on a trope that might not find favor with more contemporary audiences because it's more of a traditional thing that she did in this setting, and that's how I see comedy now. It's not that I don't want to ever scare any writers away from it, but it's weird from me as a fan. I wasn't involved in any of your script writing or any of your decisions, and yet that was my first reaction. It took me out of the story for that split second to have that thought, I wonder if he's going to get mad tweets.
Yeah, well, and that actually is something that crossed my mind too with that scene specifically. I haven't. So far.
Good.
Anybody, that's not an invitation to anybody listening. But I actually the character that she interacts with is specifically a very modern kind of trope.
Yeah.
That she's interacting with, and I guess basically it's not really spoilers. So someone has to seduce a guard to get into a restricted area, and the guard is very much a kind of classic fedora and neckbeard type character. So that's my thinking was that if I have her, Bugs Bunny seduce Elmer Fudd type scene, then by having the person that she's doing that to be legitimately awful, and then get his immediate comeuppance, and then kind of hang a lampshade on how gross the whole thing was, then that kind of diffuses the whole thing.
Right.
So that was my way of dealing with that specifically. If you hang a lampshade on things, a lot of the time, people will let it go, I think.
That's an interesting That's one of the things I love having writers come on is to share those tips, tools, and tactics, things that they've, by trial and error, or sheer dumb luck, whatever it is, that they've learned, through the craft to do those finer points of it. Because I know there will be somebody listening to this that does want to try comedy, and now I'm feeling guilty, like I'm going to scare them away from it because of some of the things I've said. So you're helping me rescue those people from not shying away from comedy. I appreciate it. I like being rescued.
No, bro. No. That's true. Because if people get upset when they feel like their point of view has been mocked. But if you acknowledge their point of view while still mocking, in a lot of ways that diffuses their anger. So, I don't know. That's my theory anyways.
No, I agree with comedy, and having done it for a while now, and I know Hellmart's not the first thing you ever dipped your hand into with comedy. I'm curious, and I've never asked anybody this question before, so you're going to be the first one to try to answer it for me.
Okay.
But I think I've seen how you interact, and I've seen how receptive people are to your comedy. And if you're listeners, if you're not an audio drama fan, remember, those are fictional podcasts. If you're not a fan of them yet, or if you're just not really down with podcasts, that's cool. But one of the nuances of the discussion is that there's not a whole lot of comedy out there when it comes to this. If you're a book writer, what the book market is like. There's a flood of books all over the place, every genre, every subgenre. Horror has, I looked on Amazon earlier for book covers to try to send to my book artist, and there's 10, 11 different types of subgenres of horror just on Amazon alone. And audio drama doesn't necessarily have that breadth, if you will, of options. There's not a whole lot of comedy out there. So with you, Thoreau, I know you might not like this, being a beacon for comedy and audio drama, I'm wondering if you've had any unexpected reactions, any unexpected outcomes from doing this show, from putting it out there, something that you just didn't expect to have happen. It could have been a simple email or tweet, or it could have been something really cool, an opportunity or whatever that came out of it. But because I do see you like that, and there's not a whole lot of comedy out there, so it is the brave soul who goes out, and you've been tested by the market, and you're doing really well, and I'm very happy for you. So that's why I want to put you in the spot for this. Any unexpected results, outcomes, experiences from this?
Well, I guess it was unexpected to me how welcoming the audio drama community generally is. I think that a lot of the comedy audio dramas tend to feel a bit of kinship with each other. So I was a little surprised at how much people were willing to accept a newcomer into the fold just immediately. But which I guess that's not exactly the kind of surprise you were asking about, because I was really surprised by you guys, the established AD community. But I honestly was surprised that the show did as well as it has so far. I was not expecting for it to do as well as it has. So that's been a surprise and a welcome one, of course. But this whole thing, honestly, it's been such a season 1 of Hellmart, which is going to be wrapping up here in the next few weeks, has been such a kind of roller coaster of just going up and down. That I haven't had a whole lot of chance to sit back and take a look at the experience yet.
Well, so, and that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, you have been going pretty balls to the wall for a while now. I can remember when I first reached out to you, just tripping across your podcast. I was working on building landscaping some stairs. So that was, and I live in Washington State. So that's been a long time ago that I was able to get outside and do all that. So yeah, I mean, you've been, and you haven't slowed down. It's remarkable how much you've accomplished really in what, less than a year, obviously. Well, since we, the public, have heard of Hellmart.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I guess it was like May when I put out the first trailer, so May of 2017. So coming up on a year, pretty close here.
You deserve a breather.
Yeah, no, I've got other projects going, but I'm definitely going to take a week or two off once I wrap with the season 1 here.
Good for you. So I'm going to, now that I've given you the first ever question of that sort about the unexpected outcomes, I want to actually ask you a question I ask every writer I bring on. So if you're a brand new listener, at this point of the show, I want to put these fine guests in a corner, reduce all their wiggle room so they can't get away and avoid the question, and I want to hit them with a hard question. And there's a reason why I do this. I'm going to ask Thoreau in a second here for his horrible writing experience. The reason I do this is, one, it's self-effacing type of question. I like to make fun of myself. You've heard why. When I was a young teenage boy, scrawny, reed-thin type of kid, I got picked on a lot for it, and I used comedy as a defense mechanism against that. And I learned as an adult, one of the great things about that life lesson was it taught me to not take myself too seriously, not take the world too seriously. You know, we're all going to die in a heat death in a couple billion years anyways. The sun's still going to come up tomorrow no matter what I do today. So I've learned to not take myself so seriously, to the point where I don't let myself get discouraged from writing and from creating if, I just have a lousy day or somebody sends me a nasty message just because they want to troll. I do that with my guests, too, because it shouldn't be only my voice that you hear. So I ask them for a horrible writing experience that they're willing to share with us so that we can all understand the strife and struggle of being a creative and how we can come out the backside of that still shiny. So, Thoreau, what is your horrible writing experience?
Okay, so my horrible writing experience, at heart, first and foremost, before being funny or a musician or anything, I am a procrastinator. I will gladly put off anything that I can possibly put off. Around, probably 8 or 9 years ago now, I got it in my mind to write a graphic novel. It was going to be about this was going to be about an Aztec deity that had survived the years and had to take a job as a cab driver in San Francisco. So I started sketching out ideas. I'm friends with a couple artists, so I thought maybe I could get them to draw it for my writing. So I would sketched out ideas, and I started putting the story together. And I'm a pretty big structure nerd. I love structuring out my stories, act breaks and anchor scenes and all that good stuff. And so I spent months plotting out the stories, and I thought, well, this could go on for several different several years. I could plot my sequels out this way. I wrote character descriptions, and after about 9 or 10 months of doing this, I realized I hadn't actually written a single word of the story.
Oh, no.
And I realized that I had plotted it out so far ahead that I wasn't really interested in the story anymore. Mm-hmm. So I had spent nearly a year of my life carefully crafting every detail of this universe and the plot and the characters, and never wrote a single word of it because I just procrastinated my way out of being interested in the story at all.
Oh, God, man. I can totally believe that too. I mean, that's horrendous, but I can believe it.
Yeah, that's my horrible writing story is I didn't even get to the writing.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a qualifier. We'll put a little asterisk next to that one, but no, it's legitimate because how many it may take different, shape or form, but a lot of us might do that in our own way, edit ourselves right out of a rhythm. I've seen that so many times. A lot of writers will identify with that, where you feel compelled to edit as you write, and you end up losing the sense of the story or even the love for the story. So it's interesting that you outlined and structured everything so well that you basically already told yourself the story, so you were done with it.
Yeah, I was done. I knew where it ended. I didn't need to actually write the story itself. But yeah, I tend to do that. I write very long outlines of every script before I actually write the script itself. So I actually do very few drafts after that. But it's my wife actually expressed surprise that I actually got the show into production, because I constantly start projects and then lose interest in them or just procrastinate my way out of finishing them.
Okay, so here's another way, totally unplanned, another tool tactic that you can help other people who plot a lot. I don't. It depends on if I'm doing a novel or an audio drama. I will build I call it a skeleton, scaffolding, whatever imagery you want to use. That's what my outline consists of. I will know who my couple main characters are, my antagonist, and that's about it. And then I discovery write everything else after that. So I can't give advice to writers who are heavier plotters like you were just talking about there. So how do you do that now successfully then? How do you deeply, richly outline and plot and still be in love with that story and still keep it fresh?
Right. Well, I mean, so I do it in a series of levels here. So I have the basic story idea, and I've got my A, B, and C where the characters are going. So I'll actually write in my scenes there. I've got, scene 1, 2 characters meet. Scene 2, they do this. Scene 3, they save the day. And once I'll write that out, actually, like on paper with like in like little squares, and then I'll write it out as an outline, usually a page or 2 outline. That's a little more detailed, kind of expresses the plot, and then I'll take that and I'll write my first draft of the script. I almost every story I have, I include. I will play off your classic story structure, 3-act, 7-anchor scene, midpoint reversal story structure. I'll start there, move things around, play with it, but I'm a firm believer in having that structure in place in the first place, so that you can then subvert it.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's what works. Anyways, I know, like you yourself said, I know a lot of writers have a very few basics and see where the story grows as they go. But
right.
if when I try to write that way, I usually end up. It's not so much a story as a series of things people have done, and then they go to bed.
Shoot. Makes sense. Yeah, I would suffocate myself trying to outline it like that. So I'm glad you kind of walked us through that, because I wouldn't be able to advise somebody on how to not fall out of love with a story if they were to do that. It would be too difficult. I would just be completely lying to them, because I wouldn't be able to. Because that's one of the things that I love is thinking I know where a story is going to go, and then, not having it happen. And I did that with this book that I wrote based on the world of an atheist apocalypse. I took that world. It's not a comedy. It's not satirical. It's actually a horror story. And I thought I knew how it was going to end. And then 300 pages into it, something else came around, and it was just so much better and so much more exciting for me. So it's interesting to hear from folks like you who create like that. And I guess it's just, whatever feeds our creative soul, that's what matters the most.
Yeah. And, because in a lot of ways it's the magic that happens within the story is where the fun moment to moment stuff is where I really enjoy being creative and having that having the comedy and having interesting moments. Although I do enjoy having a story suddenly zig when it seemed like it was going to zag too.
Yeah, those are fun times. They really are. So, listeners, we're going to try something new here. Thoreau is going to hang out, and we're going to do a Q&A portion. Now, we got some questions about his shows, because he does have two of them. He will have two of them. We're going to hang out and do that. So if you're a patron of mine for Subject Found, Diary of a Madman, Atheist Apocalypse, or Who Killed Julie, or Horrible Writing, even though I don't have patrons for this, and for Thoreau's fans, those who are fans of Attention Hellmart shoppers, you're going to get an exclusive as well. I'm not going to work out the details because that's not my lane, but Thoreau will have exclusive content from this interview for you as well. Before we get to that Q&A, though, Thoreau, I want to give you a chance to educate my listeners on what this wonderful world of big box stores is all about. So can you talk about what you are currently working on and you have out there for them to enjoy, and maybe even a little about what's coming up?
Yeah, definitely. So for any of your fans that don't know, I've got right now I'm finishing up the first season of Attention Hellmart Shoppers, which is a show about a big box style, Walmart style store that happens to have been built on top of the gates of hell. It's a basic supernatural comedy. Our tagline is fighting the forces of evil on minimum wage. And like I said, I'm about to finish up the first season. Although I will be continuing with a few with bonus episodes monthly for my patrons. That's come about through my many years of working retail day jobs, so that's the main thing I've been working on now. I do have coming up. I'm in the middle of writing the first and only season right now of a show coming up called 1994, which is going to be a kind of road comedy set in 1994. Kind of a John Hughes meets National Lampoon's Vacation circa the 90s kind of story. I'm doing a few voices here and there, but
just a few, huh? I got to call you on that one. Just a few.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I doing voices for other shows. It's so much harder to find those characters than when I write them for myself. It's funny.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm doing a voice for the Tunnels. One for a show called Aftershocks that's coming up. But let's see. I don't really have anything else going on in my life right now. It's like all Hellmart all the time.
Well, I was going to say, in fairness to you, I mean, you have consistently been working this beast. Anybody in audio drama knows how much work goes into an audio drama episode, just one. And you've been doing this nonstop for coming up on a year now. So yeah, it's not like you're slacking by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. This will be. I think I'm coming up on on 19 episodes for by the time the season finale comes out. Plus, I've got like 9 bonus episodes I produced for my patrons. So.
Yeah, I mean, in less than a year, and just for context, for those of you who don't do audio drama and might not know, I mean, I started Subject Found in October of 2016. That first season ended in March of 2017, and we just released the first episode of the second season in January 2018. So he's already outdone me with one and it's because it's so much work. You know, I mean, Thoreau, you don't have to admit to it how much you do, but there are tens and dozens and sometimes up to 100 hours for each episode that is put out there. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. You know, like I with very few exceptions, I do everything myself. So it's basically my second job at this point.
Yeah. And to include music, right? So you do the music.
Yeah.
You do how many voices on that show?
Oh, Lord. I think it's something like, I think I'm up to like 18.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
distinct characters at this point.
All the writing, all the editing, all the writing. I mean, yeah, all the social media work for this stuff. That's a lot of work. So be fair to yourself. Be fair to yourself. So, hey, where can people find you, and where can they find your shows?
They can find my show at attentionhellmartshoppers.com or any of the usual places, iTunes, any podcatcher your choice. They can will be able to find my new show on iTunes once it comes out. That's going to be a few months away. We're still early in the production stages of that. I don't have any IRL projects going on right now, so there's nowhere to find me unless they would like to come by and buy something from the store my wife and I have. We run a pet supply store.
Oh, okay.
in Milwaukee. I'm here in Milwaukee, so that's our day job.
You just can't venture far from Hellmart, can you? Not even in real life.
No, I can't. No, but so yeah, attentionhellmartshoppers.com, and there will be links to anywhere you might care to stream the shows, or you can do them directly from the website there. And of course, like I said, there's plenty of bonus episodes not available to the public at patreon.com/attentionhellmartshoppers.
All right. Now, those of you who are patrons of Thoreau's or mine, hang out, because we're going to include some exclusive content for you to thank you for all the support that you give to him and the support you give to me. If you are a regular fan of Horrible Writing, thank you for listening and giving this chance. Now, what I want you to do, call to action, go check out Attention Hellmart Shoppers. If you just need a little levity in your life, you're going, believe it or not, Hellmart has everything for all of your needs. You're going to find the levity that you need in one of those episodes. It's a glorious ride. I absolutely love it. Thoreau, I do want to thank you for coming on and being able to teach us how comedy can better serve us to be better writers. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. It's been a lot of fun.
Before we head into this special Q&A session with Thoreau, I do want to thank the fine folks over at Fate Crafters Network for providing some very interesting questions for him to answer. Specifically, Pacific from Lake Clarity, a horror audio drama, Robert from The Tunnels, another wonderful horror audio drama, Dohai, who is the writer of the second season, the upcoming season of Diary of a Madman, and lastly, Eric from the newest Fate Crafters show, Mars Fall. If you haven't heard of their shows, go check them out. Go enjoy the many adventures that they've already created for you and many of the adventures that are to come. Now let's head into this Q&A for patrons of Paul Sading and Thoreau Smiley. All right, so patrons of me, Paul Sading, and Thoreau Smiley from Attention Hellmart Shoppers, we got a nice little exclusive for you this time around, and Thoreau was kind enough to hang out. We did about an hour interview on Horrible Writing where he talked about how comedy can help him connect and has helped him throughout his life, dealing with things, connecting with people, just finding that muse. So this time, what we're going to do here is we're actually going to give some exclusive content to you, the people who help us do what we're doing. Him and his shows, and me and mine. So let's do that, Thoreau. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. These questions come from inside Fate Crafters Network. So those of you who are fans of our audio dramas, you'll know that we're part of Fate Crafters Network. Well, there's a bunch of devious minds in that network, and they came up with some questions that they wanted to know from Thoreau. First one, from Pacific Obadiah. He is the creator of Lake Clarity, and he's got a couple other things that are coming out that we'll share with you in the future when the time is right. But Pacific asks, where did you get your inspiration, and how did you develop your characters and world? And which did you develop first?
I got my inspiration through years of being involved in retail. Too many years involved in retail. I'm a big fan of horror and supernatural, the genre. Specifically things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, to a lesser extent like Supernatural, the X-Files, that kind of stuff. And my idea was that, what a normal business in any of these places, in any of these shows, would have a lot of supernatural stuff going on there. But I still think that wouldn't be nearly as bad as your regular customers. That was the basic idea behind Hellmart to begin with. I definitely came up with the idea first. The characters kind of followed, and I actually didn't necessarily write all the characters for myself. I was originally going to be collaborating with a friend who ended up not being able to have the time to become involved, and I found after going over the first couple scripts and rewriting them and rehearsing them out loud, I came to realize that I could probably pull it off with minimal input on the side of the actors, on the acting side from anyone else.
Which character did you develop first? This question is from me.
Good. Probably the first character I developed was Jimmy, the okay. manager. Daniel originally was a very different character. He's kind of your audience surrogate main character, mm-hmm. although that changes a bit as it goes on. But he changed a bit. But the first character that was really fully fleshed was probably Jimmy and Chet were probably the first two that were fully fleshed out characters. The secret of my voice acting is that I'm just doing really bad impressions of other characters.
Well, you do a wonderful job. Absolutely. You know this. So anybody who's listening to this exclusive content, if you listened through the full interview, you'll have heard me tell Thoreau that I tripped across him because of the artwork. That's what caught my attention. And the fact that you were also listened to somebody else that I listened to. So I said, sure, what the hell? I'll try this. And I think you were 3 episodes deep by that time, maybe. But anyways, I listened to the first two episodes back to back, and I thought, I got to reach out to this guy. This stuff is just genius. And you'll know this, Thoreau. I was convinced. You could not have convinced me otherwise. I was convinced that you had Matt Young from Hello from the Magic Tavern. Yeah. As the show, I was so convinced. So you may think you do bad impressions of different people to get those voices. I don't care. I am amazed at the range that you're able to pull off on there. It's ridiculous.
Well, thank you. No, it's it's funny because as time goes on and I do the characters more and more, it becomes easier to do them. But at first I was doing them over and over and over again to get them to sound not the same. So
yeah, see, I would have just taken the easy way and in the production process added some effects somewhere and just try to call it a day. There's no way I could have done that. I do one character for you, one character for Pacific, and it's hard enough to keep those two straight. So, and I don't do anything for myself for my own shows, rightfully so. So I don't know how. Yeah, it's amazing. So we've got Eric Saris is the creator of Mars Falls. So if you haven't checked that out, Mars Falls is also a Fate Crafter show. We haven't announced it yet, but we will in the next couple of weeks. So by the time you hear this, it is now, congratulations, a Fate Crafter show. And
congratulations,
woohoo! Sci-fi show so those of you who are fans of sci-fi, definitely go check out Mars Falls. Eric says, which character for this show did you come up with first? We kind of answered that. When you write a new character, do you immediately hear their voice in your head, or does the voice come together over time?
It depends. Sometimes I have sometimes I'll have a voice that I'll write a character for. Sometimes, though, usually I'll write a character and then work out their voice. So I'll have a character in the script, and I'll figure out who they are as I go along. I do a lot of rehearsing out loud, going back and forth between the characters, which is not how I record, but so most of the time, I simply write the character and then figure out what their voice is after I do it.
Okay. God, you must put so much time into each episode doing all of that. Because some episodes you have a ridiculous number of characters. We're not talking monologues or just dialogue between 2 or 3 people a lot of the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, the writing, the writing for me is the hardest part. The longest part's the editing. My recording, I usually record at, a 25 to 30 minute episode. Usually takes me around 2 to 3 hours to record. I usually break it up between a couple days because my voice will start to get a little rough after a while.
Okay.
But editing all that together, that's the time suck right there.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. For anybody brave enough to venture into this, you better listen to what he just said. Mm-hmm. They don't tell you that up front, I swear. All right, I'm gonna save one question for last, so I'll skip down to Robert Chauncey of The Tunnels. I'm sure most of you have already heard of that show. It's a long-standing horror show. Great show. Definitely go check it out if you have not heard of it. Robert asks, seeing that you do most of the voices, how often do you screw up and accidentally do the wrong character?
That actually doesn't happen very often.
Oh, you show off.
Because of my recording method. Although, because basically I'll go through the script and record all the lines for each character. I don't switch between characters in a session. Mm-hmm. So not very often, although what happens more often is I'll be doing a character and realize that their voice has been slipping a bit and it'll sound a bit more like another character. So it's just kind of character bleed rather than just doing the wrong character straight up. Okay.
And that makes sense the way you do that too. I can totally get that. It's still amazing what you're able to do. But yeah, I can get that. Okay. Last question here is from Dohai. Those of you who don't know Dohai, he is not only the administrator of the website for Fate Crafters, he's also a writer. He wrote the second season of Diary of a Madman, which I'm currently producing because, like Thoreau just said, it's a huge time suck. It's a lot of work to do that. And I had to get subject found out first. So you'll hear more from Dohai in the future. He asks, why 1994? What can we expect? And are you doing all the voices again?
Right. So why 1994? That's the year I graduated high school. So that, you can officially see how old I am. It's a story actually I've had kicking around for years and years, and I could never find the right way to tell it. I tried writing it just as a novel, which it just wasn't working for me, and I abandoned that a while back. But it's very semi autobiographical, but it's a story I've wanted to tell for a while, and it's based off very, very loosely off events from my own high school life. So there's that. I get to do the music for it, which I was primarily a musician for many years, more than an actor or a writer. So there's that. So I get to put a lot of music into it that I haven't had an outlet for in other ways. And what you can expect is a fun period piece. It's definitely going to be R-rated.
Oh, good.
And I am not doing all the voices. I don't know. I don't think I have a whole lot of voices left that people haven't heard. But I am going to be hiring basically a full cast for that. Well, I say hiring. In the AD community, there's not a lot of hiring.
Yeah, it's very, again, much like comedy, hiring is a subjective term in audio drama.
Yeah,
but the neat thing is people, we just all get excited about doing this. So I think that's cool. I'm really looking forward to that one because you and I are right around the same age. And, that's a callback to a time that, when you're younger and there's still the promise of life and all these things that you're going to do to change the world. And it's just that time of somebody's life is a very addictive, robust time because you're just excited and stimulated about everything. So you feel much more connected with the world. So you're going to make us all journey back to that time. It's going to be very cool to experience that. I don't think I know anyone in audio drama doing a period piece from that time.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, it's a time period that I don't think a lot of people have explored yet. I mean, the 90s in general, but we've just barely gotten far enough away from it, honestly, for it to be a period piece. But no, it's it's the period of my youth. That's when I was. Those were my formative years, the early 90s. So it's, one that now that I'm an old guy, I can look back and explore.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm really excited about that one. So I want to thank you one more time for this. And so for patrons, again, I hope you enjoyed this exclusive with Thoreau Smiley. If you're a patron of mine and you haven't gone and checked out his show, I can't say stuff because 1994 is not out yet, but if you haven't gone and checked out, attention Hellmart shoppers, I really do. Even if because I know some of my patrons have told me that, hey, you dig my darker stuff. Atheist Apocalypse isn't necessarily your thing. And that's okay because attention Hellmart shoppers is not Atheist Apocalypse. So go check it out and get your funny bone tickled because it's a great show, Thoreau. It's I absolutely love it. And long may it last.
Well, thanks, Paul. Thank you.
This has been Horrible Writing, and hopefully after this episode, you suck less than you did at the beginning. I am Paul Sading, your host extraordinaire. You can find me over on the Twitterverse at Writing Horrible and over at paulsading.com/horrible-writing. Until next time, suck less.